The economy has taken such a hard hit under the gentle care of Joe Biden, and inflation is so out of control that even Bernie Sanders isn't spinning it for the Democrats anymore. All of that and more on this September 28th edition of The Breakdown. Here's my question of the day for you. I'd love to get your response to it. Do you think Joe Biden should cancel student loans for people who haven't paid them back? What are your thoughts? Tell me in the comments section below. We will love getting a chance to read them. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel below and click the notification bell. And please leave a like so that YouTube is more likely to show this video to left-wing Democrats. All right, let's go to some of the clips of the day. The first one, let's talk about the economy and the student bailout. Joe Biden has hired former Atlanta mayor, and she is trying to explain that they don't honestly have a clue how much money the student loan bailout will cost.
Real quickly, too, when will we have those? I know the White House is still working on some of its numbers because I know we have other topics we want to get to. When are we going to have those numbers?
Well, the White House is continuing to work on all of the details of this. We will have a rollout in a few weeks to make sure that people can go into the portal and they can apply for this relief. We have to remember this is not automatic relief, so we don't expect that all 40 million eligible borrowers will take advantage of this.
Well, Keisha Lance Bottoms, former mayor of Atlanta, she was a terrible mayor. Things went really wrong under her leadership. And so what does Joe Biden do? He hires her for the White House. Of course he does. Perfect fit. What's interesting is she is pretty honest in saying they don't have any idea how much this is going to cost. But you know what? They don't care because they're not paying for it. You are. And I sure hope you enjoy it. Joe Biden continues to tell us that the greatest thing he's ever done is pass the Inflation Reduction Act, even though people who voted for it and helped write it admit it really doesn't do anything to help inflation, at least not for the probably next 10 years. It's all about being a green energy bill. That's not going to help inflation. It's not going to make your groceries, your gasoline, or anything else in your life less expensive. Not at all. But they keep telling us it's going to reduce inflation, just like Joe Biden does right now.
Every single Republican voted against the Inflation Reduction Act. And when it actually came time to do something about inflation around the kitchen table, every one of them said no, House and the Senate.
Yeah, he blames the Republicans once again. Well, let me explain, Mr. President. The reason the Republicans didn't vote for that is because they knew it wouldn't reduce inflation. And that's not just the Republicans saying so. Every honest economist in the country says so. Some of the honest Democrats admit it. And places like the Wharton School of Business from University of Pennsylvania, they also admit it's really not going to help inflation. So when you talk about people sitting around the kitchen table, the only inflation that's getting reduced is the waistlines of Americans, not because they're on a diet, but because they can't afford the food that they would like to be eating. That's just a fact. This next clip has to do with our favorite White House spokesperson, Karine Jean-Pierre. I love it when she tries to make us all believe that Joe Biden is just working day and night, and somehow all those vacations that he's taken to Delaware, they're not really happening because he's up every night, late, working on getting this economy under control.
You might hear him say that in just a little bit, how he has worked towards to make sure that the economy works for everyone and not to leave anyone behind.
Well, there's a lot of people getting left behind, Karine. That's just the problem. Most Americans are being left behind. They now have 11 months of a paycheck because of inflation, but they still have 12 months of bills. In fact, those bills are even more expensive than they were before. Don't worry, Joe to the rescue once again. But he says that this tanking of the stock market, oh, it's not that big a deal. He actually has the audacity in public to say that Donald Trump managed a worse stock market.
The stock market, the last guy's measure of everything, is about 20% higher than it was when my predecessor was there. It has hit record after record after record on my watch.
Down $7.6 trillion since President Biden took office.
I think the watch Joe Biden was talking about was the one on his wrist, because it couldn't be the stock market that somehow he has seen as president. And this nonsense that somehow that his was better than Trump's, the only time Trump had a real just drop in the stock market during his presidency was when COVID hit. when everything fell. The bottom dropped out of everything. And after we kind of got through the worst of COVID, the stock market roared back to record highs. Now, the reason most of us know is because our retirement funds are in those stock market accounts, and we look at it and we say, this is good. I might get to retire early. Under Joe Biden, we look at it and we say, I'll never retire if I live to be 100, because I'll never get back what his mismanaging of the economy has done for this country. Well, our next opportunity is to see that not even all the Democrats are on board with him. Every now and then, somebody gets real honest. Bernie Sanders is such a person. Now, Bernie doesn't pretend to be a real Democrat, even though he runs with the Democrats and wanted to be the Democrat president. He's actually a self-described Democrat socialist. Most of the rest of them are too. They just don't admit it like Bernie does. Here he is talking to a late-night comic who's not funny and explaining what a mess we are really in.
So do you think it's enough for Democrats to run on in the midterms, or do you okay.
No, I don't. Look, what we don't talk about in Congress and we don't talk about in the media is what's going on with working families in this country. And the truth is that the middle class of this country is falling further and further behind. Wages are not keeping up with inflation.
That's a pretty honest answer and a truthful one. The middle class are falling further and further behind. And part of it is because the policies of this administration are to raise more and more the government debt, continue to spend money we don't have, borrow money we can't afford to pay back, and then give away things that we can't afford to do to people who either may not need them or certainly don't deserve them. This is absolute formula for an economic disaster, which is exactly what we're facing. But the real pain is not being felt by the rich and the high and the mighty. It's being felt by the people in the middle and the people even at the bottom. And that's why I would like to think that people are waking up or would wake up between now and Election Day and say, the way that Joe Biden and the Democrats have messed up the economy, let's give the Republicans a shot to at least stop this stuff. And then in 2024, let's give them the whole ball of wax like the Democrats have. You see, the Democrats have the White House, they have the Senate, they have the House. They can't blame anybody, not anybody, but themselves for the economic conditions that we are facing. But it's not just the economy that the Democrats have completely misunderstood. Amazing as it is, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota believes that this recent passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, which was supposed to be about the economy, but as I said before, it isn't. It's about the Green New Deal and climate change. She has the audacity, in the midst of a horrible, horrific hurricane barreling against the Florida coast, even as we speak today, she has the audacity to suggest that Democrats voting for this ridiculous spending bill is going to help the hurricanes. I'm not making it up. Watch.
We just did something about climate change for the first time in decades. That's why we've got to win this as that hurricane bears down on Florida. We got to win in the midterms. We understand that.
I don't know how to break this to her, but there is no vote in Congress that stops a hurricane. This one, if you were really doing it well, you should have at least been able to stop it at the Cat 2. It's now on the brink of a Cat 5. Good job, Democrats. You fixed climate change for us. By golly, those people in Florida are going to be better off because they voted for a massive multi-trillion-dollar spending bill. And somehow you really, surely you don't, but you pretend that you believe that it's going to change the weather patterns on Earth. I can't even begin to tell you how absurd that is. You know, the only thing more absurd than that would be that thinking people whose brains actually function would continue to vote for people who say things like that and who do things like they've done. Well, thanks for watching. I hope that you will consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the notification bell below. And remember to leave a like on the video and share your answers in the comments to the question of the day that we mentioned earlier. Be sure to tune in to the Live with Mike live stream this Friday. And of course, if you want more of my news analysis and commentary, real simple. Sign up for my newsletter at MikeHuckabee.com. It's totally free. That's going to do it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.